Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Tuesday, September 10th, 2024. What year are we in? 24? Yes, correct. It doesn't display the year on my calendar on the computer desktop. It assumes you know what year it is. Not always the case. But then again, I'm not the Republican nominee for president, so I guess it should be okay. All right, forgive me. We got another show to roll out today. It's debate day. I think we're all done with all primaries. Are there primaries going on? I don't know. I guess if I read something, then I would know. Let me see. Any elections today that I don't know about? I don't think so. We might be done with them. Okay, good. It's a little bit late. Everybody should have done this work already. But at any rate, it's debate day. We'll all be focusing on that. Lots of news to catch up on and lots of stories and storylines advancing, including the storyline that Donald Trump is possibly incompetent to the task, not only, of course, of being president, but of running for the presidency. And larger and larger news outlets, I guess, admitting that they've taken notice of this and allowing for stories to run. I don't know what has held them back the whole time. Of course, everyone else's theory is, well, they want Donald Trump to win. And that might be right. It does seem to sell newspapers. But, deep down, I gotta feel like they feel somewhere along the line, hey, things will actually get worse for us personally if Donald Trump is president. I mean, dictatorship. And it's very hard for people to get their heads around. And so, while they might have gone along saying, I just don't believe I think it was a rhetorical device where he said he wanted to be a dictator on day one. And we shouldn't put that much stock in it. But I guess as people are listening more closely to him, watching what the Project 2025 people are doing, what people around him promise will happen in the next administration. And then, of course, the law breaking already beginning, well before he's actually got any power to do these things. I guess it's got to have people a little bit worried. And if you're really thinking, dictatorship in the future, like what difference would it make if he were president and you sold lots of papers and got lots of clicks? Let's say you became fabulously wealthy covering Donald Trump. Why do you think he would let you have that wealth when he could have that wealth? Especially if, his whole shtick is beating up on newspapers. I would just assume that any wealth you accumulate because of Donald Trump's rhetoric and the profits from covering it, he would just say, you need to pay me for that. I'm the one selling those newspapers. Give me that money or I'll take it. And I wouldn't assume that any money that you make off of or get because Donald Trump is in office is safe in your hands, whether it's from a tax cut or favorable treatment of your government contracting business, or you're just selling lots of newspapers or whatever it is that you're selling, even if it's Donald Trump T-shirts or whatever, his NFTs or his kid's new crypto scam or anything like that. If you make money and he finds out about it, he's going to seize it. That's why you don't, do these things. Anyway, like I said, lots to catch up on. There's some news from the regular world that normal people care about besides us weirdo political junkies. James Earl Jones, Darth Vader. Darth Vader is dead. Now that would be cause for celebration inside of the Star Wars cinematic universe. He's the bad guy, but not the guy who played him, or not the guy who played his voice, rather. The guy who played him is someone entirely different and gigantic and very imposing. And James Earl Jones, of course, the voice of many things, of lots of things. And I guess that's his voice's best known role, or at least the one I hope made him the most money. I'm not really sure. And of course, his greatest role of all time, the King of Zamunda in Coming to America. I really enjoyed his role, and I think he did too. And I think part of what made James Earl Jones such an endearing person is that's a guy who really could have taken himself way too seriously, but by all accounts, that was not who he was, and he enjoyed talking to people and I think I saw some, obituary stories written up and discussed in social media about him chatting with, excited teenage fans of Star Wars and answering questions about stuff, I don't know whether he had any particular insight into the Star Wars cinematic universe where he could answer in canon, but it didn't matter. People were just interested in hearing. Of course, the voice do they still use the CNN voiceover? Like, it's part of what gave CNN gravitas was his voice saying that this was CNN. Even when people came to realize that CNN was something of a joke, it still mattered. And any number of other roles. And now the number is finite, and you can go back and count them. So, people will be sad about that, but lived a full life, 93 years of age, and so we can all take some relief in that. A life well lived. So, okay. That's news. I can't, cure you if you're feeling low about it, but we can talk about some other things. But most of those will also make you feel low. A quick review of headlines arriving in the inbox, whether via email or social media, besides the warning that the debate is happening. It is Tuesday, ordinarily a day in which we are joined in the end of the program by Joan McCarter, and I don't think it's going to happen today. It's it's a down cycle at the moment, but circumstances conspiring to keep her from the program yet again today, and so we miss having her around, but she brings us the very necessary updates about what's going on, usually on Capitol Hill. We've drifted away from that a little bit, not only during the recess, but as, more interesting stories are out there elsewhere. It's getting to be kind of a stale story that Republicans are incapable of governance and are on the verge of destroying everything, not just as an affirmative Republican program, but through neglect. For instance, government shutdown. That's the usual Tuesday topic. The Hill provides us with the headline this morning that we would no doubt be talking about. In fact, the odds of our ignoring it now are about zero because it's right in front of me. GOP opposition. The GOP opposition appears to doom Speaker Johnson's, who's from the GOP, by the way, appears to doom Speaker Johnson's initial plan to avert shutdown. What do you know? Michael Schnell and Emily Brooks are the Hill reporters who put this piece together. Speaker Mike Johnson's opening bid to avert a government shutdown appeared doomed to fail in the House this week amid widespread and growing Republican opposition. Remember, they're the ones with like a one-seat majority and were barely able to elect a speaker at all, and also are apparently in the majority in the House of Representatives and would be responsible for passing any funding bills to keep the government open. Okay. So it's Republican opposition thwarting the top lawmakers. That's Speaker Johnson, believe it or not. I mean, he's the highest ranking. He's not making any laws, but okay, that's what you call that guy. Thwarting the top lawmakers' hopes of the proposal squeezing Democrats in both chambers. He had a plan to make it uncomfortable for Democrats to vote to continue to run the government, but it's not going to happen because Republicans won't even vote for it. So the trick where you pull the rug out from the other guys isn't working. All right. At least 6 GOP lawmakers announced that they will vote against Johnson's plan, which pairs a 6-month continuing resolution with a Trump-backed bill requiring proof of citizenship to vote. As you know, that generates bazillions in income and has every place in a continuing resolution. We have to fund the government, and we can fund it purely on the fumes of hatred by requiring proof of citizenship to vote, which is already required as proof of doing anything. You can't not prove your citizenship and get registered, I don't think, anywhere in America. But they want to do it again. Actually, weren't we just talking about something the other day where they just, repeatedly want to ban the same thing in order to look tough, banning it several times, or always be talking about it? And what does it have to do with funding the government? Nothing. They just, we're trying to think of something. What can we demand, since we don't really care about funding the government, it would be fun to shut it down anyway. What can we demand that makes us look like we're doing something that MAGA rally goers would be happy about? So that's the answer. At least 6 Republicans announced that they'll vote against this package, more than the number needed to tank the effort, because I think 3 are needed to tank the effort. If all Democrats vote no, Republicans can only afford to lose, okay, here's the answer, 4 of their members, assuming full attendance. The mounting Republican opposition is putting Johnson in a bind, caught between a restive right flank pushing for the package that combines the lengthy CR with the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, moderates concerned about the political implications of a shutdown threat so close to the election, and GOP defense hawks sounding the alarm about how the half-year stopgap would affect Pentagon spending. So who exactly is it that's opposed? Let's see if we can find out, and why. Johnson, however, is digging in his heels on the CR plus SAVE Act, vowing to plow ahead with the legislation despite the White House promising that President Biden would veto it, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer planning to bring up an alternative clean stopgap. There is no fallback position, Johnson told reporters on the Capitol on Monday. This is a righteous fight. This is what the American people demand and deserve. Is it, though? Opposition, however, is threatening to derail his plans. The chorus of concerns that emerged publicly on Monday night was headlined by Representative Mike Rogers of Alabama. That's not who I was expecting, actually. The chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, who said he was opposed to the spending plan because of the impact it would have on the Department of Defense. All right, well, they did mention that. 6 months are terrible for defense. Asked if other members of the Armed Services panel will join him in opposition, he responded, I hope so. Representatives Matt Rosendale of Montana, Thomas Massey of Kentucky, and you can always count on him doing something weird, Corey Mills of Florida, Tim Burchett of Tennessee, Jim Banks of Indiana, all together have also publicly said that they will not support this CR plus SAVE Act, mounting pressure on Johnson in the government funding negotiations. I'm not going to vote to extend bloated spending for 6 more months and grow the national debt trillions of dollars more, said Banks, who is running for Senate. So it's an easy no vote for me. Sort of. I mean, it's easy to not be responsible and just say, I don't know, somebody else has to fix it. But I'm just going to vote no on spending any money and say I'm a deficit hawk. Some of those Republicans are warning that the opposition is likely to grow. Mills, who called deficit spending the existential threat to American democracy. Well, trying to borrow that phrase, are you? And suggested the SAVE Act portion of the package was messaging at its finest, said quite a few more Republicans are planning to vote no. I'm not sure what he even means by messaging at its finest. I don't know whether he's being sarcastic or not. Some of that opposition may come from moderate Republicans who have expressed skepticism about the plan from the beginning. A source familiar with the matter told The Hill that a handful of moderates are withholding their votes on the package until they hear what Johnson's plan B is. One moderate Republican, there aren't any, don't use that, who characterized themselves as undecided or a lean no, told The Hill, I'm not comfortable with the plan right now, while also zeroing in on Johnson not detailing what the backup proposal would be. It's always good to know what the follow-on plans are. The GOP lawmakers said, look, you either oppose this one or you don't. It doesn't always, necessarily matter a great deal what the alternative is if no one's bringing the alternative to the floor or it's not written. But I get the gist. But all right. Well, he goes on to say there was an analogy that was made on one of these big calls, I guess a big conference call, that said, hey, when you go into combat, you don't plan for failure. But that's not actually true. When you go into combat, you actually do go... Excuse me, what? When you go into combat, you actually do go into failure. Well, some might say that the resort to combat is evidence of the failure of diplomacy, I suppose. I think what he means is, you always go in with hopefully with contingency plans for what to do if things go sideways one way or another. Make sure your retreat route remains clear and unblocked and you don't get cut off, I guess. All right. Well, anyway. So, yeah, when you go into combat, I assume if we wanted to sanitize, sane wash, I love that word for it, if we wanted to sane wash this guy, because every Republican needs it now, you would say when you go into combat, you actually do go in with plans about what to do if it fails. You have contingency plans. Back to him. He says, A through Z if you need to make sure that you're successful. That was just a way of saying you have a plan B. And a plan C if necessary. Do you need to, go, well, you might even need A through Z. Oh, you might need A through AA or, whatever. But that's not really the point. You have some backup plan. Well, okay. We have step 1, which is putting this thing up. And we know what step 3 is going to end up being, a clean CR or a government shutdown. So I don't understand what the middle section looks like. The lawmaker added. Hold on a second. Anyway, that's what I'm waiting to hear conveyed. I think we owe it to the voters to understand the dynamics here. It's not an invalid statement, but I mean, there's not necessarily a second step in it. It may very well be this thing goes up, then they vote it down, and then instead of it being step 3, it's just step 2, clean CR or a government shutdown, which is, I guess, really should be 2 different steps. But you get the point. I don't know. He's making it sound like it's super intelligent that he has to say, well, I don't understand what the middle section looks like. What middle section? This is the plan. If it fails, then you either say, fine. I mean, it's CR plus Save Act, right? Those are the 2 components. If you put it up and people say, I don't like the Save Act, right? Or some people are saying, I don't like the CR. But either way, step B is, you're not going to add another bill. You could. It's an option, and maybe it's something, if you add something that is favorably regarded by some of the people who vote no for whichever reason, whichever one of the 2 reasons there are to vote against CR plus Save, switches their vote, then, it's not impossible that adding a third element could do that, but I don't think that's the direction they're going. So basically, I think they say CR plus Save, it doesn't pass. Well, one of the 2 things has to go, right? Now, ordinarily you'd say, well, they could drop the CR and just pass the Save Act, except the Save Act doesn't do anything, right? It's just repetitive. Non-citizens can't vote. Well, that's already true. And of course, the real problem is that the government shuts down on September 30th. Passing the Save Act doesn't solve the actual issue at hand. So it's not going to be the CR part that you drop. So, there's 2 elements. They don't pass together. You're going to drop one. It's going to be the Save Act. That's the CR. And I guess no. I was going to say step 2 could be doing it for 6 months, but they're already doing it for 6 months. So I don't know. Yeah, that's really it. There's no real reason to believe that there's a step 2, with the possible exception of doing a full year CR or doing a 6-month CR that has more money in it for defense to make them feel better about it, or doing some sort of CR that's not clean and then falling back to clean and then landing on government shutdown if they can't pass that. But there's no real reason to expect that there's a second stage in that, and it's not really an answer to say, they won't tell me what step 2 is. So they're the ones who are being unreasonable. There's no step 2. Or if there's no step 3. There's just, here's the package. Pass it, yes, no. If not, you put up the CR on its own. That's really all there is. Anyway, the moderate Republican, which doesn't exist, needled Johnson for his comments earlier in the day that there is no fallback position, saying the only inference of that is that your next step is to shut the government down, and I can't get behind that, they added. Much of the public opposition, meanwhile, is coming from fiscal hawks. All right. Who are opposed to extending government funding in general and are reluctant to change that position for a bill that appears to be destined to fail. I haven't supported a CR since I arrived here, and I don't intend to start now, Rosendale told reporters. That's not anything to brag about. I think it's a crutch that's been abused by Congress for many, many years, and they haven't completed their work to deliver the 12 appropriations bills as per the Budget Act of 1974. So he went to school. He studied that. It's sad and all, but I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, the government shuts down if you don't do the CR. So it's kind of like, well, you guys didn't do your work to finish the 12 appropriations bills. I know, we didn't, and so that's why we have this CR instead. Well, I'll tell you what, I refuse to do that work of passing the CR, so the government should shut down. You didn't do your work, I'm going to make it worse by not doing my work, and that'll make things better by increasing the pressure on you to do some other work. I don't really know. Some of the fiscal hawks are wrestling with their vote. Let's listen to this. Representative Eli Crane of Arizona said he was undecided and that while he likes the SAVE Act, he has never voted for a CR. Like, what's his name? Rosendale. I mean, that's not a logical position. You know, I'm not voting for this one because I've never voted for any other one. I mean, a better position or better statement would be I'm not voting for them because I oppose their usage in principle. That it's dumb, but it's a possibility. Let's see. Keith Self of Texas. That's, by the way, everybody is a Republican here. They're only talking to Republicans because they just dismiss. The role of the Democrats is to say no, apparently. And it's always been kind of the role of the minority in the House, a majoritarian body. You're there to provide a quorum and vote no. That's actually things that members of Congress have said about Congress for many decades now. So let's see. Representative Keith Self of Texas also said he was undecided due to unknowns about the total cost of the stopgap. Shouldn't be too many of those. The CBO should have told you what the numbers are, but okay. The skepticism from the likes of Crane, Rosendale, and Self is notable given that they're all members of the House Freedom Caucus. There you are. Which had put out an official position advocating for a stopgap into 2025 with the SAVE Act attached. So that's their idea, I guess. One hope among advocates of the plan was to tee up attacks on Democrats who opposed the non-citizen voting issue, even though they don't oppose non-citizen, or they do oppose non-citizen voting, I guess, generally speaking, upholding the law as it stands. They just oppose doing it all over again for no particular reason. And I don't know if there's anything more egregious in it. Like, there's will prohibit non-citizen voting, and there's something beyond that, like will go door to door knocking on the doors of brown people and forcing them to show us citizenship just to not be dragged out of their houses and deported. I would be against that. 5 House Democrats voted in favor of the standalone House bill, the SAVE bill, earlier this year. Democrats, though, counter that it is already illegal for non-citizens to vote and express worries about the requirements burdening eligible voters. Representative Bob Good, who's almost not a representative anymore, who stepped down as chair of the House Freedom Caucus after he lost his primary, would normally be part of the group of hardline conservatives against any kind of stopgap, but Good is supporting the bill with the hopes of averting a year-end omnibus spending bill that is more favorable to Democratic priorities and policies, hoping that former President Trump could sign more favorable spending bills into law if he wins the presidency. I think it's worth trying to avoid a CR into the lame duck and then an omnibus in December. I think that would be far worse. Good said. So I'm willing to try this path to avoid that. Some members are not being explicit in their positions. Representative Andy Biggs, another Freedom Caucus member, said he knew he was going, or how he was going to vote, but declined to reveal that position because he had not yet informed leadership. Representative Jason Smith of Missouri, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, that's amazing to be reminded of that, said, I don't shut down government when asked about his position on the CR. Okay, that's, he's actually doing the work, I guess. Asked if that means he would vote in favor of the bill, he repeated the statement. That's interesting. I mean, okay, I don't really want to parse that. So what? Anyway, here's Murdery Trader Green, who noted that she has never voted for a CR like the other two idiots earlier mentioned. Also said it's pointless to vote for the measure without a clear vision of next steps, as if you would understand it or know what would be clear. But that she wanted to talk to Johnson before saying if she would vote yes or no. Wanted to do some horse trading. What is Speaker Johnson going to do? Is he willing to fight for this? Green said. And if he's not willing to fight for it, why? Why would we vote for it? I don't know. To do your jobs and keep the government running? Oh, well. So, okay. I mean, I didn't learn anything about the logic of their decisions, just that there wasn't much. But, yeah, okay. So the upshot of all this is there's 6+ who have said no to the package of CR plus save. And what do we got? September 10th, there's 20 days left, so under 3 weeks. And I guess if you count today, they got 3 weeks to get the work done. That's, in CR world, it's actually plenty of time to get it all wrapped up. But we're getting the names of the people who are making problems. And it's, I think, clear from that list who wants something or who would take a trade of some sort of gift from the speakership in order to come over and provide a vote in support and get this thing across the finish line. But it's not clear that Johnson is in a position to grant any of those gifts. And it's not clear whether any of those gifts are reasonable in their nature. So, a lot of those people are well-known crazies, and there's no satisfying them, and it's a dangerous game to even try. You should probably not bother trying to cut a deal with those guys. All right. Well, there you go. First segment. Instead of the last segment spent on this, today it's the first, and now we march on into some of the more interesting news making fun of how addled Trump is. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Yeah, that Greg wasn't here today to lament how long that break can sometimes feel. Although when you're solo, it actually feels a little quicker somehow than talking your way through it. But all right, well, in the meantime, nothing happened. So you haven't missed out on anything, except I was reminded that perhaps the greatest role of James Earl Jones's lifetime was as, what's the name of this character? Thulsa Doom? That's the bad guy from, super bad guy. There's a lot of bad guys. Bad guy from Conan the Barbarian. Is that right? If I remember this clip correctly. Mighty OCD reminds me of the role having been played, along with a little animated GIF of him in the role. And I think that's where I recognize it from. So, okay. Yes, there are many differing opinions. But there you go. There's another indication of a guy who didn't take himself too seriously. I'm often intrigued by that with actors. So many actors who do seem to take themselves really super seriously. And you need to. I mean, to a certain extent, if you're trying to cultivate a certain kind of reputation in Hollywood, and that's extremely important. It's a weird business. But I'm always kind of surprised by that, or surprised by when actors take, or they become known in like super serious, very dramatic, Oscar-nominated roles, etc., but also take roles that are like, this is a frivolous movie entirely, dopey, I don't know, summer teen thing, but they take a role, and then it sort of dawns on me, like, if you're taking the craft of acting seriously, you're like, well, yeah, I mean, someone has come to me with a role, it's paid, I'm doing it. My job in life is doing that, playing those roles. I'm not that person. They just, I don't care why they ask me to pretend to be this person in front of a camera. I'm getting paid to do it, or I'm going to do the best job I can with it, or I guess, but I don't know. I guess there's, a sense in which there are no frivolous roles, or there might even be a challenge, but then there are people who take themselves super seriously, and I would never appear in such a dumb movie. I'm cultivating this highbrow profile instead. I not my industry. I couldn't tell you which way to go. I have no recommendations for those of you. If you're looking to break into acting, or you are already a famous actor and you're looking for career advice, you're in the wrong place. We don't do that on this podcast. Okay, let's see. Right, news. That's what we do on this podcast. I knew there was something I wanted to share with you. All right. I feel it is my responsibility to you to let you know, if you don't already, what I think is the latest insane claim made by Republicans, such that the label of weird resonates that much more strongly. Republicans are extremely strange and extremely weird, as the terminology goes, and the accusations that they level are therefore very weird as well. And you should always keep in mind that every Republican accusation is a confession, and it's very true. And when they come up with such crazy and imaginative things, you have to wonder what would drive something like that. And it's usually the fact that it's a confession somewhere along the line. But the latest crazy, also it turns out to be not all that late breaking in the crazy, but the latest weird thing is J.D. Vance is joining in on this one. But you will find that there will be Republicans, including, of course, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and all of their surrogates, getting up on either on social media or in front of people in rallies and saying, as they usually do, they're going to say somewhere in their speech, things are very dangerous here in the United States because immigrants. They're pouring across our borders by the trillions, of which there aren't any, but, and they're taking over our cities. And I think the last week or so, one of the things has been, that Venezuelan immigrants in particular had taken over Aurora, Colorado. I don't know if we named that one or discussed it at all, but it's, like most Facebook rumors / MAGA email forwards / now presidential platform positions with Donald Trump, they believe the stories that they heard from someone's nephew's cousin's neighbor's sister that swears it's true, that Venezuelans have taken over something, let's say an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado. I believe last night there was circulating that they've taken over a supermarket in Aurora, Colorado, and of course all bolstered with, either misidentified or faked photos. Last night's supermarket takeover was circulated as, look at all these Venezuelans, they're taking over a supermarket in Aurora, Colorado. And I looked at the picture just briefly, glanced at it. There was nothing in it that made me say, this is a supermarket that's being taken over. This is a supermarket with some people who might possibly meet the description of appearing to be Hispanic in some way, Latine in some way. But that's about it. And then others, with sharper eyes are like, hey, all the signage is in Portuguese. This is a photo from inside of a Brazilian supermarket where no one is taking anything over, by the way. But I guess this was supposed to be, this is in Aurora, Colorado. So where are the white people? They're all brown. This must mean the supermarket has been taken over. It's been taken over by Portuguese-speaking Venezuelans or Brazilian-loving Venezuelans who have swapped all the signage. Please don't swap the signage after you squeeze the Charmin whenever you take over a supermarket. But really, what were they supposed to do? How else do you manifest the takeover, right? You don't just hang around the supermarket. You got to change the signage. Obviously, it was just, a picture from inside a Brazilian supermarket. Brown people all look alike to this guy, so something, Aurora, Colorado. But the latest one is that this was on targeting Haitian immigrants in particular, although I think they mean to expand it to immigrants in general. Not in Colorado, but in Ohio, I think centering around Springfield, Ohio, where the Simpsons live. I don't know nobody knows where the Simpsons live. But Springfield, but they don't know which one. But in Springfield, Ohio, the new rumor is Haitian immigrants are stealing people's pets and also, by the way, in some cases, wildlife perhaps from local parks, ducks, geese, what have you, and eating them. Now, I don't know. No one that I know of who's making this accusation has been invited to dinner. And it may be just that they're resentful, and that's why they're making this accusation. But no one's ever seen anybody eating anything. And by the way, this is all bolstered with so-called evidence in the form of a picture of, at some point being circulated, a picture of a black man holding a goose under his arm. And from that, J.D. Vance, in joining in all this, by the way, graduate of Yale Law School. This is how they teach the proof class, I guess, at Yale Law School. Don't hire anybody from Yale Law School. They don't know what they're talking about. Now, by the way, not everybody, it's been brought to my attention that not everybody took proof as part of their law school education. Everybody takes evidence class, how to introduce evidence. But a very important element in that I guess is actually missing from a considerable number of law school education, certainly from J.D. Vance's, is how to tell, what is the difference between evidence and proof? And just a reminder that, evidence tends to prove things. It's admissible if it does, or at least the beginning assumption is this is the sort of thing that would be admissible as evidence. Sometimes there are prohibitions against it and you can find exceptions to it, etc. That's the evidence class. What are the rules under which certain evidence can be included or excluded? Proof class is, are you sure you're doing anything good with this evidence? You can bring things that are legally admissible evidence, but they don't actually help prove that this thing happened. A photo of a person at the scene of the crime, sometimes colloquially referred to as proof, is in fact no more than just evidence. This is evidence of this person's presence at the scene of the crime. Perhaps, depending on the kind of photograph, the context, and any known date, like if there's date stamping and the date stamping is correct, right? Then you can say, well, I can prove that that person was at the scene of the crime when the crime was taking place. But without that date stamping, or even with the date stamping, what the proof class is supposed to be is, can you prove that the date stamping is accurate? Can you prove that the photo isn't faked, et cetera, et cetera? And then all together, then if you can, then it serves as proof. Then it could be proof establishing the person's presence. But up until then, it's merely evidence that tends to prove that they were there. It's a fine difference, but it's an important one. So, you skip that sort of stuff if what you're out to prove is, well, here's a picture of a black man carrying a goose. And as I was saying, Haitian immigrants are stealing pets and local wildlife and eating them. So here's a picture of it. Well, no. One, they're not eating. Two, we don't know anything about this. We don't know who is this guy. What country is he in? Does he already own that goose? Is this man a goose farmer? Is this his own goose? Is this a goose he's rescued from his backyard who's lost and he's carrying it back to the park? Is it a goose that he's carrying illegally away from the park, but not for the purposes of eating it? I don't know. None of that is there. But in Facebook world, you make your assertion, you show a picture, you wildly scream that that's proof of that. Dumb people who don't know the difference say, yes, it is. And they see it in the here's a picture presented to them in the context of my cousin's next door neighbor's wife's aunt took this picture and said that this is what was happening in it, and then it goes from there. So yes, that's what they're doing, going out there accusing Haitian immigrants in particular. And I thought post Clueless that we were all cool down to party with the Haitians. All right. Well, apparently not. So a really just despicably racist attack being leveled here. And, we're watching in real time as it works with MAGA Republicans, but also that Yale Law School graduated J.D. Vance only too happy to promote this thing and tell people that it's true, and then, people buying into it. To that end, let's see, I don't know if I put aside any actual of the early reports of the thing circulating, but what I've got for our purposes today is Steve Bannon writing at the Maddow blog over at MSNBC about the repercussions and fallout from it. And in this case, that Vance, I guess, was called out on it and offered what Bannon says is the wrong defense for promoting ugly misinformation. What's worse, he asks, than J.D. Vance promoting a racist conspiracy theory about immigrants eating pets? Republicans' woeful defense for why he did it. What defense could there possibly be? Let's find out. Towards the end of Barack Obama's term, Steve begins, an interviewer noted that the right had targeted him with all kinds of foolish conspiracy theories, and he asked the Democratic president whether he had a favorite. Just an interviewer. We don't find out who. Obama didn't hesitate. The first thing that came to mind was Jade Helm. That is a pretty good one, by the way. And I'll read on because you'll probably find out why. In case anyone's forgotten, U.S. military officials organized some training exercises in 2015. Go back to the old way of expressing it, 2015. Okay. But military training exercises for about 1,200 people in areas spanning from Texas to California. That's not a lot of people. It's a big area. Somehow, right-wing activists got it in their heads that the exercises, labeled Jade Helm 15, it was in 2015, right? Jade Helm 15 were part of an elaborate conspiracy theory involving the Obama administration, the Pentagon, Walmart, and some, quote, secret underground tunnels. Like, they love that motif that later morphed into being part of the Pizzagate thing, secret underground tunnels underneath Comet Pizza that had no basement and what have you. You remember all that. The far-right fears never made any sense, and the then president apparently found all this rather amusing. But one of the underappreciated parts of the story was that a variety of Republican officials, including senators, governors, and U.S. House members, at least pretended to take the conspiracy theories seriously. Texas Governor Greg Abbott even felt the need to order the Texas Guard to, quote, monitor the military exercises, just in case Obama was up to something nefarious. When GOP officials were pressed to explain their interest in claims that were transparently ridiculous, they invariably said the same thing. Their supporters and constituents took the nonsense seriously, so they were compelled to do the same. All of this came to mind again this week, as my MSNBC colleague Jahan Jones summarized. And here's a quote. On Monday, J.D. Vance dived face first into a racist and xenophobic conspiracy theory when the GOP vice presidential nominee promoted a false allegation that Haitian immigrants in Ohio have been eating people's pets. This aligns with other fear the brown people rhetoric pushed by Donald Trump and his cringe-inducing running mate. Yes, as this week got underway, Steve adds, the Republican Party's vice presidential nominee actually published a social media message in which Vance wrote, "Months ago, I raised the issue of Haitian illegal immigrants draining social services and generally causing chaos all over Springfield, Ohio. Reports now show that people have had their pets abducted and eaten by people who shouldn't be in this country. Where is our border czar?" This is a very long way of getting around to, I'm attacking Kamala Harris, which, would be a legitimate thing to do if there were a legitimate attack in there somewhere. But he's, in an effort to make this relevant again, where's our border czar? We say Kamala Harris is the border czar. She's not, but we say that she is, and here's a border problem. And now there's lots of things that are wrong with this, including the fact that, well, we'll get on to the fact that A, this isn't happening, but B, that the Haitian immigrants in the Springfield, Ohio area are not illegal. So there's also that. But we get into that with the Republicans all the time. They have never learned that lesson. They will not learn that lesson. They're insistent that they do not learn that lesson. They refuse to learn that lesson. All immigrants, in their view, are illegal. And so, it's worth mentioning in passing, I guess. But you see how vehemently, this is the vice presidential nominee, which is troubling enough. Although my side note on all of this, and I've mentioned it before, and I mentioned it yesterday on social media and pointing this out, not only is it just plain despicable, but can I just remind everybody, I mean, you are all political junkies, you know this, but J.D. Vance has been a public figure, elected or otherwise, for about 15 minutes. He's been an elected official for about 15 seconds. Just a reminder, his first election was in 2022 to the Senate. He's in his first term in the Senate. He was elected in 2022, which means he took office in January of 2023. It is not yet 2 years that he has served in any elected capacity anywhere for any reason. His second ever election in his life is this one, where he's nominated for vice president. So he's nothing and nobody in public service, has no public role whatsoever, writes a book. That's interesting. And people write books and launch that into political careers, yes, but they don't usually go one election to 1 6-year term in the Senate. But F it, I'm not even 1/3 of the way through my 6 years. I'm looking for a new job, and the job is the second highest elected office in the country, the vice presidency. He's done nothing whatsoever. I mean, we talk about the preparation for the job of Kamala Harris. I mean, I guess what? Technically, was she in her first term as senator when she ran for or was nominated to the vice president slot and ran and won? Yes, I guess that's true. But of course, she was also attorney general, had been local DA, right? So she had stood for election at least a couple of times before then. And overall, generally speaking, very well prepared, working her way up from the county prosecutor's office to the state attorney general's office to the Senate, and then standing for election. And then now having served nearly, anyway, 4 years as vice president of the United States, certainly a far cry from I am under 2 years in elective office, and I've just spent, I've spent the bulk of it running around doing dog and pony shows, not actually legislating. I haven't passed anything because I haven't been here long enough. 2 years in the minority in the Senate. Anyway, I only bring that up. Well, I bring that up because he's super inexperienced, and you should be wary of that, being elevated to a heartbeat away from the presidency, behind the person who will, if he somehow forces his way back into the White House, the oldest president in history, and, really rather rotund and leathery looking and could keel over at any moment. We don't know anything at all about the guy who would succeed to the presidency under those circumstances. But one thing I do know, like a unfrozen caveman lawyer, is that asked to show us how he would lead in an audition for the job, he says, people are eating cats. They're illegal Haitian immigrants. They're eating cats. This is on the level of there are litter boxes in the schools, which is also a thing I think he pretended to fall for as well. Yale Law School, for God's sake. I'm smart. Read my book. I rose above my backward upbringing, by his own description. They may or may not have had sex with the couch. I don't know. I'm not saying yes, but I'm not saying no either. Given the fact that he's like, yeah, there's litter boxes in schools. Yeah, sure. COVID vaccines will kill you. Oh, absolutely. People are eating pets. Oh, you bet. You know, all of this stuff. Does that tell you anything? Like, you should be alarmed. If he was giving great answers to these questions, sensible answers to these questions, you should be saying, who is this guy? Why are we, one, he's weird, and that will give you a bad feeling. But two, what if he wasn't? You'd still say, not even 2 years as a senator and literally nothing else in public service, and then the vice presidency, when this guy who's supposed to be his president is about ready to drop dead at any moment. We can't do this. That's crazy. Sorry, Steve. Back to your commentary. All of this, the things that he said, right? Oh, months ago I raised the issue of Haitian illegal immigrants. I've been on this for a long time. That's not actually something to be proud of. All of this was, of course, utterly bonkers, even by 2024 standards. The Haitians in Springfield are in the country legally. They've been there for decades. There were no actual reports, as he says, about any immigrants stealing and eating pets. The nonsense spread like wildfire on the right, but it had no basis in reality. Just in case you wanted to check on that, there is, in fact, reporting about the subject that basically, okay, so, well, they're stealing all these pets. So some enterprising reporters actually called the local police department. Have you heard anything about that? Because that would be illegal and people would report that, right? They're pets. They care about their pets. People will, knit sweaters for their dogs and cats. You don't think that they're going to call the cops when they find out for sure that definitely Haitian immigrants have eaten them? Well, they would report them, except, of course, nobody has reported it because it hasn't happened. Well, it's evidence that tends to prove it hasn't happened anyway. All right, how about that? So, yeah, the nonsense spread like wildfire on the right, but no basis in reality. Nevertheless, folks like conspiratorial billionaire Elon Musk and Republican Senator Ted Cruz, also an Ivy Leaguer himself, whose affection for reckless misinformation appears limitless, he was in on Jade Helm as well, seized on racist right-wing chatter and treated the insane theory as a legitimate story, as did Vance. And why, pray tell, did a candidate for national office decide to lend his voice to conspiracy theories that are racist and ridiculous in equal measure? NBC News' team asked Vance's team. And I guess this is the result. After NBC News asked the Vance campaign about the lack of evidence for his claim, certainly lack of proof, a spokesperson said that the senator had received, quote, a high volume of calls and emails over the past several weeks from concerned citizens in Springfield, and that his tweet is based on what he is hearing from them. The spokesperson did not say, however, whether any of those calls or emails had included evidence of violence against pets, and did not offer proof of Vance's statements. That's one of their problems. So, yeah, there they are. Well, lots of people told me that. I heard on the internet. Yeah, right. Well, you can't do that and say, also maybe make me second in line for the nuclear codes. I mean, it might even be a step up from the guy that you would have us hand the nuclear codes back to. And the codes may be invalid by the time you get them anyway, because he'll have sold them to the Russians by the time you inherit them. But you get the idea, right? It was, in other words, the Jade Helm dynamic all over again. A bunch of hysterical people told the senator that the ludicrous theory might be true, so Vance, instead of relying on facts or trying to produce any of his own, proceeded as if the preposterous claim had merit and deserved to be amplified. Whether he fell for a scam or cynically went along with the absurdities is irrelevant. Vance was told to take ugly nonsense seriously, so he did. He's been groomed. That's one way of viewing it. The idea of applying critical thinking skills never entered into the picture, despite, a terrific record at The Ohio State University and then Yale Law School. Why would there be critical thinking skills? And by the way, Mr. Beardo will tell everybody, the reason I'm qualified to be vice president before I've even done anything at all in public service is because of my critical thinking skills. I'm very smart. I am very intelligent. And yet you participate in society. I am very intelligent. This guy. The vice presidential hopeful isn't a leader so much as he's a follower of frenzied conservatives who saw some racist garbage on Facebook. That's a good point, too. I'm ready to lead. No, you're not. You're being led around by your nose by idiots on Facebook. You didn't lead, you followed. That's a great debate answer, by the way. In theory, Vance would apologize for his role in this fiasco. In practice, those waiting for the Ohio Republican to express contrition will probably be waiting for a very long time. Really forever. He is, of course, doing his best to impress Donald Trump, whose main thing in life is never to apologize. So, yeah, that's not coming anytime soon. All right. Well, there's more out there, and I don't know whether it's, do we have time for news or probably not. No more news, everybody. The break is coming. It's pretty quick. I will just add, squeeze in one news item that came to my attention via Chris Geithner. I had seen some reports of it earlier, and just to add to the Texas Attorney General kicking in doors for people who dare to register Latina voters in Texas, and the Florida authorities kicking in doors trying to intimidate people who they believe had signed petitions to put abortion measures on the ballot. Now in Missouri, a motion has been filed to hold the Secretary of State, one of the Ashcrofts, in fact, in contempt of court. Why? This after the Missouri Secretary of State moved to get their abortion amendment, now set to be on the November ballot, off the ballot. You remember, of course, Donald Trump runs around saying everybody thought Roe v. Wade should be overturned and be sent back to the states. We wanted to be sent back to the states. Not actually true that everybody wanted it. Most people really didn't. But to the extent that anybody thought they wanted it, the Supreme Court was very proud of itself by saying we're going to let the states decide the issue of abortion. And now that states are deciding those issues, and everybody's finding out that even in very red states, people are deciding, we don't want it to come out this way. We would actually like to preserve the right to abortion. So now state after state also saying, hey, we want this for ourselves as well. The populace saying as much, and signing petitions as necessary to put these protections on the ballot. The Republican governors of these states are now doing anything they can and coming up with any excuse they can to try to prevent them from actually appearing on the ballot. And Missouri is the latest one to try to do that. But people are striking back on this as well. I'll give you the story when we get back. People are wanting to put Ashcroft in hot water for trying to facilitate the switch. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I already see something I want to double back on and return to, but let's stick with this one for a second just to give you some context about what's going on. It's just yet another Republican state where when they said, okay, we want to be like Kansas, we want to be like other states that have adopted measures to protect abortion rights in their constitution over what we thought was overcoming what we thought was the unlikelihood that a red state would vote this way, but in fact they do. And even those things faced some opposition, right? People tried to impose at the last minute requirements that these things clear a 60% threshold, a filibuster, if you will, for voter initiatives, which is amazing all by itself. Here's the story from FirstAlert4.com, I guess one of the local television stations down in St. Louis area. Motion filed to hold Ashcroft in contempt of court after Missouri Secretary of State, that's Ashcroft, moved to get abortion amendment off November ballot. This is J. Ashcroft, J-A-Y, not the initial, who I guess is the latest in a long line of Ashcroft idiots still running around Missouri in elective office. A motion was filed on Monday, though, after Missouri Secretary of State J. Ashcroft tried to get the abortion amendment off the November ballot. People went and did the work to qualify it for the ballot. They got it on there. Now, of course, Republicans are saying, oh, my God, we're probably going to lose this thing, just as we did in every other state where this has been on the ballot. we got to do something to get it off the ballot so that people won't be so excited to come and vote for President of the United States. I don't think it's really going to work that way, but, you know, they're trying anything they can. But they shouldn't be trying this. So here we are. On Monday, Ashcroft sent a letter to Tori Schaefer, a lawyer for the woman who proposed the amendment, stating that his office has decertified the amendment. I guess we'll say purporting to decertify the amendment. I don't know if he's really got that power. And if he does, whether he's gone through the process necessary for it. But he doesn't like it. So he says, here's a letter that says, I have decertified the Amendment 3 petition for the November 5th ballot. He claimed that the amendment would be decertified over, quote, serious concern about whether the proposed petition satisfies the legal requirements for adequate notice to the public, unquote. Well, I'm sure that there is a requirement of adequate notice, but what he's basically doing here is saying, I hereby declare that there has not been adequate notice to the public. What do you mean? What are the specifics? By what logic do you arrive at this? What is your evidence that this actually happened this way? Tell us. And so, well, we're only 2 paragraphs into the story, so I don't know what else he's come up with, but it's beginning to sound like the basis is the same, that we're hoping that local elections officials in the counties strategically placed around the country will use to say, I refuse to certify the election results here. Why? Because I have suspicions about its validity. What are those suspicions? It doesn't matter. I'm voting no. I don't know if things can work this way. Now, let's see. The article at this point is illustrated with an embedded tweet from Alexis Zotos, who I don't know who that is, but it might be one of their reporters. Breaking: Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft has decertified Amendment 3. Just sort of taking him at his word that he has decertified it. I don't know whether he has or hasn't. Trumpies and paperwork, man. This is, of course, the ballot initiative that could lift the state's ban on abortions. This comes as the Missouri Supreme Court is set to hear the case for the ballot initiative Tuesday morning. Guess what morning it is? It's Tuesday morning, everybody. And I don't mean the thrift store. Did you know that there was a thrift store named that? Are they just around here? Anyway, here's the letter. The entire letter is here. So remember, I was like, well, maybe there's more evidence elsewhere. It looks like it's impossible for there to be any, because it's a 1-paragraph letter. Dear Ms. Schaefer, please be advised that the Secretary of State's office, pursuant to section, he cites a section, so that you're not supposed to ask any questions beyond that. But this is a letter to a lawyer. They're going to ask this question. Section 116.120, RS Missouri, revised statutes of Missouri, presumably, has rejected the above referenced petition. I administratively certified Amendment 3 for inclusion on the ballot on the backdrop of serious concern about whether the proposed petition satisfies the legal requirements for adequate notice to the public. On further review, in light of the Circuit Court's judgment, I have determined that the petition is deficient. Therefore, this office has decertified the petition for the November 5th, 2024 ballot. Should you have any questions, please call me. And by the way, do you want to feel free to contact this office? He gives the number 573-751-2301. Or if you're outside of Missouri and you would like to call anyway, 800-669-8683. Those numbers again, well, all right. You can hit rewind on the podcast. But if you're listening live, you're out of luck. Wait for the podcast. Sincerely, by the way, Jay Ashcroft is a nickname for John R. Ashcroft. So another John Ashcroft who doesn't really know or care about what the law dictates here. Shortly after the letter was made public, a motion was filed by the defendants in the case to hold Ashcroft in contempt of court. How do you like that? The filing stated that when the court stayed the judgment, no party was to take any action until further order of the court. And that less than 24 hours later, Ashcroft, well, he did take other action. He sent this letter, which the motion claims is directly contrary to the court's order. I don't know the background of the case necessarily, but I guess they were considering the validity of the petition as well. But they told everybody to freeze in place. Don't do anything. Can't have anything that influence the outcome of an election. Nobody take any action. Ashcroft immediately takes not only an action, but just says, yeah, I've decided it. The court wouldn't. I'm decertifying it. The motion states that Ashcroft should be held in contempt in order to maintain the status quo and rescind his contumacious letter. Wow. To the extent that the Secretary has advised any local elections officials or others of his September 9th letter, this court should require him to notify all necessary public officials that his letter is void and that Amendment 3 remains on the ballot until further order of the court. Well, then a inclusion of, is this the motion to hold the Secretary of State in contempt? Is it long? Longer than we would usually read here. The amendment, better known as Amendment 3, was ruled invalid on Friday. I mean, we already were having problems. By a Cole County judge, Judge Christopher Limbaugh. Any relation? Because I think the Limbaugh that we know and dislike greatly, but who is now dead, he was a Missourian, wasn't he? Or was he Mississippian? Oh, I don't remember. It's a common enough name that it might have no connection. But I just wonder, Judge Christopher Limbaugh ruled that the ballot measure should have included language stating that the amendment would repeal the state's ban on abortion. I mean, not really. You know, it's an amendment that would enshrine the right to an abortion in the state's constitution. The state currently bans abortion. You should have said that this constitutional amendment that secures the right to an abortion would overturn the abortion ban. Yeah, sure. No one would ever figure that one out without help. Former Missouri Supreme Court Chief Justice Mike Wolf, with 2 F's, by the way, told First Alert 4, the TV station, that Judge Limbaugh's ruling was wrong. And of course it is. And he expects the state Supreme Court to overrule it. He said Limbaugh mistakenly applied the rules for an initiative petition seeking to change an existing law and applied them to an initiative petition that seeks to change the state's constitution. What I am shocked by is that for the first time since our current constitution was enacted 79 years ago, that somebody actually misread this statute and the Constitution to come to this result. I think it's a complete misreading of the law, said Wolf. An appeal of the ruling was filed on Saturday afternoon, and it will be heard by the Missouri Supreme Court beginning at 8:30 a.m. on Tuesday. So we're like an hour and a half into that hearing already. Mallory Schwartz, Executive Director of Abortion Action Missouri, said she expects the state Supreme Court to rule in favor of Amendment 3 being placed on the ballot. By the way, don't we solve everything at the ballot box? Well, we can't try the president for his crimes, and even if we have tried the president for his crimes and convicted him, we can't sentence him because something settle at the ballot box. So, we have a dispute here. Settle it at the ballot box. No, we're not putting it on the ballot. This is just another in a string of these attacks that we've seen over the past 18 months, and we've won every single time, and I am confident we will win tomorrow, she said, but they asked her that yesterday, and today is the day that they'll win. Amendment 3 got on the ballot as an initiative petition, IP for short, and by the way, that's one of the guys who signed the petition in Florida. That's why they're at his door. IP Freely? Does anybody know this guy? They're outside. Right now, they're arresting a guy by the name of Benjamin Dover for signing the petition in Florida. And, I mean, it's an unfortunate name, but leave the guy alone already. Anyway, IP's initiative petitions only get on the ballot in Missouri after they receive the required number of signatures from across the state, like everywhere. Supporters of the amendment got the signatures and then had them certified by the Secretary of State. By the way, that's John Ashcroft, who now says, I decertify it because reasons. The deadline for Missouri's November ballot is to be set up is September 10th. That's today, the day they're supposed to be printed. The Missouri Supreme Court is expected to rule by the end of the day on Tuesday. So pretty quick turnaround, which probably means it will go just like they say. It's a pretty clear misreading of the law. They should also rule that Judge Christopher Limbaugh or Christian Limbaugh, or what's his name, gets hit over the head by a Supreme Court gavel. Just a light rap on the head is fine. You don't have to injure the guy. But anyway, this is what they're doing in state after state after state. I'm sort of curious about this, but this would take the rest of the show, I think, to read the brief. But it is embedded there. I invite you to peruse it. Okay, I said I was going to double back on something. The thing I wanted to double back on was the look out, people are eating your pets story. They are not. This from Philip Bump, who I always like to turn around to read, over at the Washington Post. Just generally what this means for dealing with people in this country. The right-wing bubble now says, I add the word now, the right-wing bubble says Trump will save your cat from immigrants. That's what they're doing now. They're now circulating like memes, like AI-generated images of Trump like cuddling cats and ducklings, because that's what he usually does with his time. Now, these ducks all have 6 fingers, which is weird because ducks don't even have any fingers. But people are, I guess, spotting them as fakes. But that's the thing they're doing now. So he's Rambo, but he also loves ducklings. Let's see, false claims and baseless ones are politically useful, so they rocket to the social media accounts of prominent right-wing people. Sort of describing a slightly different angle on all of this is Bump. Seemingly out of the blue on Monday morning, supporters of former President Donald Trump began posting myriad AI-generated images depicting the Republican presidential nominee as a savior, not of the American dream or Christianity, mind you, the normal targets of such praise. Instead, Trump was shown protecting ducks and kitty cats. And by the way, whenever something happens seemingly out of the blue, and supporters are posting things all over social media, now we know that very often those things are supplied to them, or at least suggested to them. And now we know that a lot of those suggestions come from Russian propaganda outfits. If you are not a denizen of the right wing's controversial bubble, this will probably strike you as incomprehensible. That's another word for, in this context, for weird. You're going to think people are weird for circulating this story and their memes in response to the story. If you are such a denizen, though, you know what's happening. Trump and his allies and his running mate are elevating false or unsubstantiated claims about immigrants injuring and eating pets and other animals, and, of course, blaming the Biden administration and Trump's opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, for this thing that is not demonstrably happening. Get it? The claim centers on Springfield, Ohio, a small city a bit southwest of the state capital of Columbus. A screenshot of a Facebook post purportedly from a local resident warns that the author's neighbor's daughter's friend, I'm not kidding, it does say this, the author's neighbor's daughter's friend has discovered that her neighbors, supposedly Haitian immigrants, were trying to eat her cat. Like trying to eat. They were chasing the cat with a straw, wondering why this wasn't working. What do you mean trying to eat her cat? Kitty, kitty, kitty. And they were out there with one of those like covered dishes from the cartoons, trying to get the cat to jump on there. She also claimed, this time crediting rangers and police. Rangers. Why rangers? Here's the answer. That similar fates were befalling ducks and geese at a local park. Park ranger. Right? No, local parks don't have rangers. Even in, I don't know, maybe in Ohio they call them, I got no idea. They're not Texas Rangers. They're not U.S. Park Rangers. Park employees at local parks, that's Parks and Recreation, guys. That's not rangers. Anyway, in case you needed any more hints that this was garbage. This message was clipped and shared by a putative breaking news account on Twitter. It was paired with a photo of a black man carrying a goose, there you go, and walking down a street. So that's it. It has to be, the street was what convinced me. In short order, the post was picked up by a number of prominent voices on the right, including Trump advisor Stephen Miller, noted racist and whatever. From there, it metastasized with people plucking pieces of information off the internet and attaching it to the original claim as though it was supporting evidence. We have learned it is not. A guy at a community meeting mentioned the ducks. So therefore, proof, right? An Ohio woman was recently arrested for eating a cat. That just proves the point. Except, of course, the guy carrying the goose was photographed in Columbus, Ohio, not Springfield. Is that particularly convincing. I meant Columbus, but it wasn't just yesterday. It was a month ago. I meant a month ago. And also, he's not obviously an immigrant from Haiti, much less one in Springfield. And except that woman who was, in fact, arrested for eating a cat was also not obviously an immigrant and was arrested in a different Ohio town about 100 miles northeast of Springfield. Well, that just shows it's much more widespread than No, it doesn't work like that. And also, except that the local police say that they have no reports of pets being stolen in any manner consistent with these posts. That guy who mentioned the ducks, that was a local podcaster who did so, by the way, while wearing a sweatshirt on video, promoting his mayoral bid in next year's election, next year. None of this stopped Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, weirdo from Weirdville, from jumping into the fray with his, quote, we read it earlier, months ago I raised this issue, blah, blah, blah. Where's our borders are? Well, and he says, reports now show that people have no, reports don't show that, certainly. And the video clip that Vance linked from several months previously, he was saying he was way early on this, includes no similar allegations. I warned months ago about this. Here's a clip of me warning about it and then not warning about it. Instead, the thing he included focuses on the strain on public services and particularly housing that the town faced in light of the increase of new arrivals, an issue common to other places as well. And what's more, the Haitian immigrants at issue aren't there illegally, as the city's website explains, but no one reads that. But the conversation in Vance's universe was focused on the purported threat to Springfield's cats, so he jumped right in. So did Elon Musk, Twitter's owner, as you might expect. The guy who bought Twitter with the explicit aim of making it friendlier to outlandish right-wing claims helpfully pointed out the eating cats thing to activist Charlie Kirk, lest Kirk have missed that component of the fear-mongering. The story snowballed from various unverified reports, with people all over Twitter and other platforms chucking their own little hunks of snow at it. In MAGA world, the alleged pet eating is already a matter of fact, and Republican elected officials, including Vance, are hurrying to join the clout rush, the scramble to get attention and likes and followers by treating it as a serious issue. There's a tweet embedded here from Trump War Room. President Trump will deport immigrants who eat pets. Kamala Harris will send them to your town next. Make your choice, America. It's going to be such a party when that guy drops dead. Oh, my God. This is a central reason that Vance and others on the right are susceptible to being described as weird. There's an online world in which things get taken to the nth degree because its economy rewards that sort of hyperbole. But then these obsessions and claims are taken out of that bubble and presented to everyone else, and they don't hold up. What else can you do but marvel at how strange it all is? There's another small-town Ohio story that got some traction over the weekend, too. In this one, a guy claims that his daughter sought to enroll her kid in preschool, only to learn that she would need to hire a translator since the class would be conducted entirely in Spanish to accommodate the other kids. The claim, elevated by a prominent right-wing account, has been retweeted more than 20,000 times. Now, it comes from an account, the notoriously dependable-sounding Christian Prepper with 2 R's. Maybe that's his name. Name begins with R. So Christian Prepper R, maybe, on TikTok. And like the claims about the pets, it offers no evidence beyond anecdotes a few steps removed from the original source. It does tell a useful political story, though, one that the right is eager to hear. Unfortunately for Christian Prepper, the Springfield story ticked a few more of the boxes that make the rumor popular within that bubble. There's always next time. Oh, well, you weren't quite as popular as the other one. But this is very reminiscent of the litter box stories, in my view, and any number of other stupid rumors that got circulated. Okay, I said there's an increasing trend in open discussion of Trump's growing disability. And I think this is probably happening in anticipation of the debates. I think everyone in every newsroom acknowledges now that there's a significant chance, it's not a guarantee, but a significant chance that Trump will, at the very least, evidence the same shortcomings, and that's cleaning it up, that the press used to drive Biden from the race. Whether or not they'll actually use this to drive Trump from the race is an open question. I don't know if you can make Trump do anything. He doesn't have that kind of worry or conscience in the same way that Biden did. But I think they're beginning to see, at the very least, that there's a distinct possibility that the rest of the country, who somehow maybe hasn't woken up to this yet or has some inkling of it, will see on TV tonight a much, much, much more diminished Trump than they understood to be the case. And they will say, where has the press been in warning me about this? And they probably will register in the back of their mind, I have heard this, I've seen this, I've thought this a little bit on my own, but I've never gotten any backup on it from the papers. And and as you know, I require proof and links of everything, right? Because I'm too busy, running around believing that Haitian immigrants are eating every cat and dog in Springfield, Ohio. But this I need proof of. And so that's my speculation, is that editors are beginning to open up to this and saying, we need to hedge on this and be out there having reported or discussed that this is a possibility before it happens, so that it looks like we're up on things. Because if he flops, we can't be like, no one saw this coming, least of all us, or people will stop trusting us. They should anyway, but or they may already have done so. But this is the calculus you go through, I think. Maybe not. Now, also, by the way, it should be noted that there's also a chance that Trump doesn't do this, either remains disciplined and sticks to message, although that's very difficult to believe, or maybe just evidences things in different ways. He manages to not say anything completely rambly crazy, but, he's also blinking, sniffing, wandering all over the place, which would just be evidence of a different problem. But, so you can't count on it, but there's every likelihood that he will use this forum for evil and not for good, and will, do himself no favors. Then there's always, he didn't do anything so completely out of the ordinary, so we'll say it's a wash, But anyway, I think this possibility has people writing on these things and discussing it. Like, for instance, over at the New York Times, two things at the Times. One, Jamel Bouie, who we all expected to say such things and has said such things, and is just using this opportunity to say it one more time in, I'm sure in fantastic style. So ironically, I won't read that one first. I'll read, though, the one that demonstrates what I hope to demonstrate as a trend, because it comes from Peter Baker, who is usually something of a cheerleader. As debate looms, Trump is now the one facing questions about age and capacity. Well, we've only been asking for it for about 2 months, but okay. With President Biden no longer in the race, that's the guy who you were doing this to before, remember? Former President Donald J. Trump would be the oldest person ever to serve in the Oval Office, but his rambling, sometimes incoherent public statements have stirred concern among voters. Well, look, that's the Times approach to these things, downplaying everything. But again, Peter Baker. So here you go. The last time the nation held a debate with the presidency on the line, a candidate with about 8 decades of life behind him faced the challenge of proving that he was still up to the job of running the country. He failed. Okay, and a lot of you actually agree with that. But I know your inclination is to say, well, I wouldn't put it so succinctly, Baker, because I disagree with you on a lot of things. But, you were saying it. I was hemming and hawing. I think I was wrong in hemming and hawing, but I was hemming and hawing. I do claim that. 2.5 months later, I said 2 months. He gives an extra half month. The cast of characters has shifted. And another candidate heading into the octogenarian club confronts his own test to demonstrate that he has not diminished with age. Whether he passes that test may influence who will be the next occupant of the Oval Office. At 78, former President Donald J. Trump, they already did the J, didn't they? No? It was in the subheader. Okay. Well, at 78, Trump exhibits more energy and speaks with more volume than President Biden does at 81, but he too has mixed up names, confused facts, to say the least, and stumbled over his points. And that doesn't even get to his making points up. And by the way, did I mention? I think so. The latest of his outrages from the other day was in Wisconsin. One of his, he does, of course, the post-birth abortion trope. But, oh, yes, his latest one is, it's horrible what happens with this transgender stuff. Do you know, these days, kids, they go to school. You send little Johnny off to school in the morning, and he comes back a little Sally. They're forcing these operations on people. They're forcing, the school is making the decision, and the parents don't even know about it. It's horrible. We got to do something about it. That's, I would think obvious on its face as untrue. Like surgical centers in schools. Does anybody have kids in school that believes this? They can't even give your kids aspirin in school if they have headaches anymore without getting parental permission. I don't think anything beyond a Band-Aid is permitted. But surgery, we're doing that. Sure. Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm weaving again. I'm going in and out with different threads.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, a.k.a. Darwin_Darko, a.k.a. the most reasonable man in America, a.k.a. KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen versus Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I said I was weaving like Donald Trump. I go off on tangents and try to weave all these tangents together brilliantly if I can. But I don't know. I like to think I make somewhat more sense in doing these things. I was telling you that for reasons, and that's all you need to know. All right, we were reading Peter Baker's entry in the, hey, there might be something I need to tell you about Donald Trump real quick before the debate sweepstakes, if you will. As he pointed out, like Biden, Trump too has mixed up names, confused facts, and stumbled over his points and is weaving, I guess, even though his points are complete insanity. I mean, again, it's still whitewashing and sane washing what's going on here. Trump's rambling speeches, sometimes incoherent statements, like they're doing surgeries in schools where they're not allowed to give you aspirin, and extreme outbursts have raised questions about his own cognitive health and, according to polls, stimulated doubts among a majority of voters. With Mr. Biden now out of the race, the politics of age have been turned on their head. Yes, and he's not going to likely to recover from that with all the blood rushing to his head. Trump is now the oldest person ever to run for president on a major party ticket, and if he wins, would become the oldest person in history by the end of his term, when he would be 82, the oldest president, not the oldest person. He seems like the oldest person, but president in history by the end of his term, if there is an end to his term. We don't even know if that's going to be the case. Well, he managed to sidestep questions about his own capacity while Biden was his opponent. His rival in this one will be the debate he will square off against at Tuesday's primetime debate in Philadelphia will be Vice President Kamala Harris, who at 59 is nearly 2 decades younger. The issue has been propelled back into the campaign by some of Mr. Trump's recent public performances, most notably a meandering, hard-to-follow podcast answer to a question on childcare. We did this one last week at the Economic Club. Remember? Asked how he would help America's working families stressed by the cost of taking care of children, Mr. Trump wandered through a thicket of unfinished sentences, non sequitur clauses, and confusing logic that tied the answer to tariffs on imports, which was really crazy all by itself, even if it had been straightforward. If he had said, I'm going to pay for child care with the revenue generated by import duties, tariffs, people would say, that's actually kind of crazy, but it's an answer. I don't think you can really do it that way. I don't think you're capable of doing anything, but and you could, but a capable person could say that's just going to be a revenue source, and I am going to ask for legislation that earmarks that revenue for childcare. He was not going to, but you could say that, but he couldn't get those words out of his mouth. A clip of the exchange went viral and prompted headlines with words like incomprehensible, incoherence, and gibberish. The White House and Ms. Harris's allies pounced, mocking the word salad, as multiple Democrats put it. He couldn't string together a coherent sentence. Representative Katherine Clark of Massachusetts, the number 2 House Democrat, wrote on social media. As a result, analysts said, oh, by the way, I'm just curious, it's linked here. It wrote on social media. It was on Twitter, and I guess that's now the shorthand way of saying X, formerly known as Twitter. You just say it's on social media, but that's what I'm finding myself saying in casual conversation when I'm talking about Blue Sky. And Blue Sky is still not, well known enough in many circles that I saw a person say on Blue Sky, and my inclination is to say I saw it on Twitter. I didn't see it on Twitter, and I don't want to advertise Twitter either. But saying, I saw it on Blue Sky just produces confusion on most people's faces. So I say, I saw it on social media. I was just wondering whether they, having used that phrase, whether Baker meant it was on Blue Sky. No, Twitter. So, but that leads us to this. Representative Katherine Clark of Massachusetts, the number 2 House Democrat. I am now addressing you, not just rereading that portion of the article. Representative Clark, Congresswoman Clark, get off of Twitter. Move your account. Don't feed the Nazi beast. Thank you. Anyway, as a result, analysts said Mr. Trump will face renewed scrutiny at the debate because the Harris campaign and press drew attention to the incoherence of Trump's answer on the question about childcare. He's now subject to the same coherence test as was Biden, said Kathleen Hall Jamieson, a credible voice, scholar of presidential communications at the University of Pennsylvania's Annenberg School of Communications.edu. By the way, it doesn't say that, but I wanted to make the term even longer. Jameson, I think, knows very well that people have been calling attention to the incoherence of Trump's answers on everything for a much longer period of time. But this is a very handy encapsulation of it, certainly, and crediting the Harris campaign for making it come into focus right before the debate. And I think that's probably largely true. Trump has long engaged in discursive, roundabout, off-script speaking. What an idiot. I hate people who do that. That would not pass muster with an English teacher. Okay, I might be able to pass muster with an English teacher. Diagramming his sentences with a noun, verb, and object can be daunting. He floats from one subject to another seemingly at random, often baffling listeners, looking for a main point. A pattern that experts call tangentiality that increases with age. So look for it to get worse here on KITM. As he throws out wild assertions with no basis in fact. Okay, I try to find some basis in fact. He has mixed up Nikki Haley and President... Oh, my God. Look what I'm doing. He's mixed up Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi. She was almost president. Declared more than once that he beat Barack Obama instead of Hillary Clinton. And while arguing that he is mentally fit, gave the wrong name of his former doctor. During a June rally in Nevada, he wandered into a bizarre rhetorical cul-de-sac, speculating about being on a sinking boat and whether it would be better to be electrocuted in the water or attacked by a shark. To be fair, he thought he was on an electric boat, but okay. I'll take electrocution every single time. And honest to God, don't put that one past me, Don. I will give you electrocution every time. Don't ask me that question. I cannot serve on this jury in good conscience. Sorry. I'd love to, but I can't. I'll take electrocution every single time, he volunteered. I'm not getting near the shark, so we could end that. We're going to end that for boats, which is just, again, like a fourth grade level statement in general. We're going to do something bad. We're going to end that for whatever the subject was I was just talking about. Sometimes he makes false claims that are so far-fetched they make him appear detached from reality. True. At the end of last month, he suggested that schools were sponsoring transgender transition surgery. Your kid goes to school and comes home a few days later with an operation, he said. The school decides what's going to happen with your child, which, by the way, just for a second, I don't know whether he thought that made this claim more credible somehow, but the claim is, well, it's not. As I said, I said little Johnny goes in the morning, goes to school, and he comes back, little Sally. First of all, he goes to school, little Colby, and comes back, little Madison or Dakota. But the names are different these days. But on top of that, what's interesting is I said it comes back, it happens in the same day. He says, no, there's a couple of days of recovery. They go to school, and then they come home a few days later with an operation, which I guess is meant to lend some credibility. Of course, they stay overnight for recovery in the hospital. That's crazy. You can't just walk right back home. That would be nuts. But of course, I don't know. Now, analyzing that, as you shouldn't waste any time analyzing it in terms of reality, but I mean, like, the parents don't say, where's my son? It's 3:30, 4:30, whatever time the kids come home from school in your local jurisdiction. I have noticed that our children are not here at dinner. Well, anything could be happening. Let's go on with lives. Give them a couple days. They'll come home. Like the cat. Now I'm beginning to worry about the cat. The cat hasn't come home. Well, I know the neighbor ate it. That's one explanation. And anyway, kids. Like, no, your first problem is your kid hasn't come home from school. But okay, anyway, back to Peter Baker. He seems bent on self-destructive behavior that causes even allies to roll their eyes. That's Trump. Baker maybe too, I don't know. Last Friday, without being asked, he raised allegations that he once molested a woman on an airplane in the 1970s. Not sure why, that was wise strategically. I know you're going to say it's a terrible thing to say, he said. But it couldn't have happened. It didn't happen. And she would not have been the chosen one, which lots of people jumped on that one. Of course, one, the fact that he voluntarily raised it at all is ridiculous. You're an idiot, sir. You are an idiot. And then, of course, back to the E. Jean Carroll defense. She's not good enough. She's not good looking enough for me to decide to rape her or molest her on an airplane. Can't you see? Like, I have exquisite taste. I would never. You're out of your mind. That's not a defense. And then, of course, it didn't happen, denying the whole thing, as he now denies the E. Jean Carroll. Well, he always denied that the E. Jean Carroll thing happened. He just continues to deny that he ever met her, even when presented with photographic proof. Through the rules of evidence, we are presented with photographic proof that he has met E. Jean Carroll. But he very wisely, I guess, attacks the proof angle of it. It's still admissible as evidence, but he says, no, it's AI. We don't know. These pictures from years ago could be AI, which anything could be AI, as was pointed out also on the social medias. Trump himself could be AI for all we know. And, what was that? Paul Rosenberg, I think, came up with that. Have you ever think of that? Trump could be AI, and then I immediately thought, yeah, he could be AI, like that old character. What was he advertising? Was it Pepsi? Max Headroom? He's going to be Max Headwound. He could be. He speaks like he's got a head wound. And then I thought, because, I'm still traumatized by Twitter culture, and I thought better of that one. They're going to say I'm making fun of his having been shot, which he wasn't. He was, had cut himself shaving with pieces of a teleprompter a while back, but you know how sensitive they are about such things. How dare you? He actually has a head wound, ear wound, but he seems to be fine. The deeper wound is inside his brain, and it didn't come from any bullets. Stephanie Grisham, back to Peter Baker's piece. Stephanie Grisham, who served as Trump's White House press secretary but broke with him after the January 6th attack on the Capitol. An insurrection is all it took to come between them. And she spoke at last month's Democratic National Convention, said that Mr. Trump can be disciplined when he wants to be. Will that happen tonight? That's the question. And that she expects him to get through Tuesday's debate without looking diminished, given the rules and the time limits. She thinks those things will help him structure himself such that he won't look out of control. It may be, the Adderall and Sudafed that makes him look out of it, but she thinks that might be able to help him get through along with the rules. But I think his ramblings are certainly getting worse, she added. I don't know if it's his age or some kind of mental decline. I think the media, general public, and certainly his supporters have grown desensitized to a man who lies and rambles all the time, and that's unfortunate. That's another part of it. Asked to comment on Monday, the prison-bound Stephen Chung, a spokesman for the campaign, rejected criticism of the former president's capacity. Ready for this one? The truth is that President Trump has more energy and more stamina than anyone in politics, he said in an email. People know President Trump is the strongest candidate. He has outworked and outpaced Kamala Harris, who continues to duck the press. The Democrats and Kamala are the ones who are diminished because of all the hurt they have caused this country. That doesn't even make sense. But, the job doesn't call for making sense. Trump lately has come to explain his speaking style as the weave, and suggests he is masterfully bringing together multiple, seemingly unrelated topics into genius oratory. I'll talk about like 9 different things, and it'll all come back brilliantly together, he said last month. It is possible to do it. I don't think he's doing it, but okay. Other than his rally-going fans, who mainly appear entertained and often understand the cryptic, unexplained shorthand references he makes, they're up on the latest bubble gossip, right? I'm going to save your ducks and your cats. And what's funny is most people, when he says that, there's probably going to be a couple of reporters who are like, he meant dogs and cats, but he misread the teleprompter. Ducks and cats and dogs. Dogs told me I could call them ducks. Well, that's not what's actually happening. He means ducks this time. Anyway, other than his rally-going fans who will understand that stuff because they've heard the latest rumors, most voters have not been exposed to Trump's stream of consciousness style at much length lately. Okay. But tens of millions will be watching on ABC on Tuesday, tonight, likely the largest audience before the election. Trump's challenge is different than Biden's was. At the June 27th debate, which led to the end of his campaign, Mr. Biden appeared frail and pale, struggling to convey his message with lucidity or authority, and even seemed to go blank. Mr. Trump, by contrast, appeared physically more vigorous and commanding, even though much of what he said proved false or unclear, including his skin tone, I would add. It's not a question of age, because Trump remains energetic, said Ron Bonjean. Is it Bonjean or is it Bonjean? Because, like French. Bonjean. Does anybody know? Because that would make him Ron Bonjean, and I can't abide by that. But this person with the funny name is a longtime congressional Republican strategist. It is herein alleged. It's a matter of focus and message discipline, because he has to convince the few remaining undecided voters that Harris is not only too liberal, but that he also has a real grasp on tackling problems that families are having today. Well, that ain't happening. Still, some Republicans think that age is a factor in a country where more than half the population is under age 40, as polls show increasing excitement for Ms. Harris among younger voters. Even aside from questions of capacity, Mr. Trump's references are often, always is probably a better word for it, rooted in decades-old touchstones, as in his repeated and mystifying allusions lately to the 1991 film, The Silence of the Lambs. I mean, and I do think he peaked in the 80s and he's stuck there, as a lot of people are. So a lot of people love the 80s, but a lot of people get stuck at a certain point and they just think all their cultural touchstones are from there. I'm not up on all the recent stuff either. I delight in saying I don't know who the hell they're talking about on the magazine covers these days. So I've passed my point too. But yes, with him, actually it's really weird, not only referencing the movies and the popular culture, but, wanting to take us back to the days of, acid rain and dying bald eagles and whatnot. Anyway, but yeah, he keeps going back to the Silence of the Lambs thing with the late, great Hannibal Lecter. Terrible explanations being circulated about that these days, by the way. Anyway, many others have outlived their most productive years. Joe Biden and Donald Trump reached that inconvenient reality, said Al Cardenas, a former Florida Republican Party chairman. Biden made the right decision, perhaps helped to do so by his party's leadership. It's stunning to watch the lack of internal fortitude from the GOPS hierarchy to have the same conversation with their presidential candidate. Voters have long harbored concerns about Trump's age, but more of them were worried about Biden's, according to the polls. Without the president to focus on, more Americans have expressed doubts about Trump's capacity. 51% of registered voters in a survey released last month by Morning Consult said that Trump is too old to run for president, up from 44% when he was running against Biden. 57% had that view in a poll by Marquette Law School. Moreover, fewer voters now consider Trump mentally fit for the presidency. Just 48% of the Morning Consult poll said the former president was capable of handling the office, down from 53%. Nearly 4 in 5 said they were not sure he could serve another full 4-year term, and roughly the same proportion were concerned about his ability to make decisions. Trump's response to the child care question in New York on Thursday underscored those concerns. Often his mangled statements are summarized in news accounts in ways that do not give the full picture of how baffling they can be. How's that happening? We're all looking for the guy who's doing this, Quoting them at length, though, can provide additional context. Here is a more extended account of his reply on affordable child care. I mean, we already heard it. Do we want to read it? I don't know, but we could say it one more time. It's a very important issue, but I think when you talk about the kinds of numbers that I'm talking about, because the child care is child care, there's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. You remember all of this, right? So we won't go through this answer again, but it was pretty baffling. What he seemed to be saying, Baker now helpfully adds, was that he would raise so much money by imposing tariffs on imported goods that the country could use the proceeds to pay for child care. In itself, that would be a disputable policy assumption. But the failure to articulate the point, or any point, in a clear way, left many in the room scratching their heads, including the questioner, and the response was eventually seen by millions on social media. It was, fair to say, an answer that did not age well. I see what you did there. Did not age well. All right. Well, Peter Baker himself saying such things. There's lots more to it, by the way. And if I'm not mistaken, what was happening at the end of that one? It reminded me of someone analyzing the latest points. Oh, yes, right. More on the tariffs thing. I think he, I can't remember where I saw it, and I probably can find it if I look through my own Blue Sky feed, but I think there was further quoting either from the Economic Club speech or possibly from something else about tariffs. And I think he was saying, oh, yes, right. No, he was asked at the Economic Club about the federal deficit. Now, I know it gets a little bit weedy, but as somebody who's been president of the United States already for 4 years, you should know the difference and be able to detect the difference and speak intelligibly about the difference between the federal deficit and the federal debt. There's a federal budget deficit, the amount by which your annual expenditures exceed revenues. And that number gets added to the federal debt. How much money is the federal government in total borrowed over the years in order to finance deficit spending or anything else? Even when, if the budget was in balance, we might want to accumulate debt for some reason. But Yes, and it is the federal debt which has climbed into the trillions and, was exacerbated horribly under Trump, and he claims no responsibility for that, et cetera, et cetera. But he was asked about the federal deficit and how will your policies affect the federal deficit. They wanted to know how are you going to make the budget come closer into balance with the things that you say you want to pay for. Because he does occasionally rail about things and then say, of course he rails about wasteful spending, but then says, I want to spend $bazillion on some program that is important to me or to my supporters or whatever. And they thought, oh, okay, we've stumbled into a policy discussion. Great. Let's have that. And then he proceeds to give an answer that is only possibly relevant to the federal debt instead. And, that should sink you at the economic club. But what was of some interest was that he said, again, he would solve the federal debt with tariffs and that he was going to raise so much money through tariffs that we could pay off our federal debt. And the great thing is that we are going to raise all this money in tariffs. China is going to pay like you've never seen them pay before. They'll get used to it because they want to do business in the United States. China is going to pay off all of our federal debt through tariffs. And I was just sort of wondering whether anybody I guess it was just not worth, asking the question because everybody knows the answer, presumably, at the economic club. But I was just wondering whether anybody was going to give the good news to the people who hold all of this federal debt that you're finally going to get paid off through the imposition of gigantic tariffs on China. Because, as you may already know, it's China that holds the vast, swaths of our federal debt. So, I don't know whether it's really going to work out the way he says. But I guess it's not really worth spending any time speculating on that dumb theory anyway. Okay, let's see. Other things that I wanted to bring to your attention that he has said that are particularly horrible. In his Wisconsin speech, Wisconsin rally was the latest in the series, and so the latest source from which all the worst nuggets are being mined. People making a justifiably a big deal about his increasing authoritarianism, and that too in the New York Times today. But Aaron Rupar gets this bit from the Wisconsin speech. I better win, or you're going to have problems like we've never had. We may have no country left. This may be our last election. You want to know the truth? People have said this. This could be our last election. Now, that should probably be familiar rhetoric to you, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. But one, this is also old rhetoric. Like, this is from his ellipse speech. We're not going to have a country left. That's exactly what he said before he set the insurrection on foot toward the Capitol. I remind you of this. If I don't win, we're going to have problems like we've never had. He said it a million times. We might have no country left. Exactly what he said on January 6th. Then, this may be our last election. You want to know the truth? People have said this. This could be our last election. That harkens back just to this year. People have said this, that this could be our last election. You said this. You promised this if you won, that this would be the last election. When you were talking to the Christian evangelicals, if I would just come out and vote, my beautiful Christians, one more time, we win this election, this could be it. We're not even going to need to vote anymore. Not even going to need to have any more elections. That's if you won. Now, of course, you say, if I lose, it's the last election. So I guess it's pretty much guaranteed. He's saying, win or lose, I'm going to become a dictator. This is our last election. If I lose, I'm killing everybody, and it's going to be our last election. If I win, I love everybody, and it's going to be our last election. So I guess he's taking the position that this is our last election. I don't know. I don't know if he intended to do that, but I don't know whether he ever intends to do anything. Okay. Things just fall out of his mouth. Time for us to get ready to wrap up, which of course means that I want to tell you more about awesome things that are appearing in the New York Times. I'll give you the headline because I'm just going to have no time to read this one. The headline and the byline as well, because that's important too. Trump steps up threats to imprison those he sees as foes Subheader, the former president is vowing to prosecute those he sees as working to deny him a victory, while laying the groundwork to claim large-scale voter fraud if he loses. We know what the trick is. Byline, important, Charlie Savage, okay, always good. Maggie Haberman, well, I'm glad she's signing on to this headline anyway. Jonathan Swan and Michael Gold. So I invite you to read that one. We might double back and read that or discuss it a little bit with Greg when he returns to the show post-debate tomorrow. Other items that should be noted on my way out the door, and I really do need to get out the door, Aaron Rupar's public notice in general has, gotta roll the music here, has this item, sane washing and the damage done. Like the needle and the damage done. Can't get to reading that one, but another entry in the promulgation of the term. I love it. Sane washing. We're going to go with it. Anything else that I need to quickly throw out there? Oh, yes, right. Well, I'll read you one more quickie from social media before hopefully running through some of what Justice has on tap. Matt Baldwin, commenting on the blue sky, definitely the kind of ethical, unremarkable behavior to be expected from any entity that's merely an unwitting dupe in an international counterintelligence operation and not a willing participant. What's he talking about? Tenet Media. Remember the people who were funneling all those payments to the right-wing shills agreeing to carry Russian propaganda forward? Turns out that a day after the DOJ accused Tenet Media of receiving $10 million in covert Kremlin-backed funding, a reporter, quote-unquote reporter, for the company announced that Tenet, quote, has ended. Tenet's founder, Laura Chen, and her husband, Liam Donovan, still haven't commented on any of this. Totally normal, reports Mother Jones, and as says on Blue Sky, Anna Merlon on their behalf. So yeah, they got caught and then they closed up shop and dissolved. They're over with now. Just the normal way of stopping, fraudulent practices. We're just going to disappear. We're absconding.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, and it's now time to listen to Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next here on Netroots Radio. What the New York Times calls a disputable policy assumption is just the Times' way of sane washing Trump's tariff lies. He's going to focus on this as well. I'll be interested to hear that angle coming up next. See you tomorrow.